Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome or welcome back, as the case might be. My name is Dalibor Petrovic. I'm a partner at Deloitte, and over the last number of years, I've had the pleasure to host this series of live webcasts that we've been putting on primarily for our tech leadership audiences and enterprise technology curious people who've been tuning back in to hear what's latest, what's new, what's trending on the variety of topics relevant for our enterprise technology clients. Today's session is actually episode 5 of our 6-episode series unpacking Deloitte's Tech Trends 2024. And for you who are returning to the session, you would know that this year we've decided to do a deep dive into each one of the 6 tech trends that was published as part of our tech trend publication. Today's session is going to be delving deeper into the fascinating topics of synthetic media, deep fakes, and how artificial intelligence is now being used as a fuel for bad actors to try to sort of harm us and do harm to organizations.
Yeah.
I guess exactly. Yes, Mike. Now, I am joined by an illustrious panel, very, very impressive panel, to unpack this important topic. First and foremost, my dear friend, and as we like to call each other, brother from another mother, Mike Bechtel, who has the coolest title of all of 457,000 Deloitters in the world. Mike is our global chief futurist and the chief editor of Deloitte Tech Trends, as well as other important research. So, Mike, thank you so much for finding the time to come back and join us for this session.
It's the bi-weekly peak of my bi-weekly week. So it's great to be with you, pal. And thanks as always for hosting and having us.
Lovely seeing you, Mike. The next guest is Tanneasha Gordon. Now, Tanneasha is a partner at Deloitte, and Tanneasha leads our data and digital trust business based out of San Francisco. But today, joining us from Houston, Texas, Tanneasha, thank you very much for joining us in your time.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And last but certainly not least, Ben Coleman. Ben is the founder and CEO of Reality Defender, a tech company based out of New York that specializes in AI-generated media detection platform. So obviously, the right folks for this right conversation. For our audience, as you know, this is an actual live show, so please bear with us for any technical challenges we might face during the session today, but this also gives you a chance to submit questions to our panelists. So please, using the Q&A function, feel free to engage in the conversation, and we'll do our best to address as many questions as we can. And with that, we will start, like we always do, with a bit of a context around tech trends. So, Mike, I would invite you to give us a scoop on what tech trends are. Over to you, Mike.
Well, Dalibor, thank you kindly. And Tanneasha and Ben, deeply grateful for y'all jamming with us today and taking us on our double click into episode 5 of 6. Trust, cyber risk, what could go wrong and what's new in the endless game of cat and mouse between good actors and those who would seek to do us harm. So folks, 5 episodes, 5 sessions into the season, I spend, a little less time on framework exposition each time because I'm presuming that the likelihood of any of y'all having showed up without having gotten any of the prior stuff is approaching 0. It's probably not 0. It's probably an asymptote, but nobody needs to talk about asymptotes on a Wednesday. So let's just get quick, get real. Tech Trends, in its 15th year, seeks to make sense of what's new and next in tech. The wrong way to do that is to look at everything as an endless a la carte blizzard of buzzwords, to look at everything as unprecedented. It's magic. No. Everything we see in our 15 years of exploring technology emergence and making sense of all things newfangled has shown us that pretty much everything is deeply precedented, right? Headsets, AR, VR, right? The hot new thing in, user-computer interaction, right? Spatial computing, the metaverse. That's really the story about user interfaces continuing a 100-year march towards simplicity, right? Which was mainframes and punch cards to desktops, laptops, phones, is finding us getting beyond the glass and beyond screens to a world where you paint pixels wherever you need them. Why? Because simple always wins, right? On the information front, right, you go from arithmetic to rows and columns to patterns in the past to projections of the future to gasp, machines writing poems and painting pictures, right? The idea of cognitive automation and of an ever rising tide of machine intelligence, right? Why? Because smarter always wins. And then over on the far right, you got this idea of computation platforms, as geeky as it sounds, stronger always wins, right? From Moore's law and miniaturization to virtualization, aka the cloud, to parallelization, and on to decentralization, aka Web3 and the blockchain, right? Which has been having quite a comeback over the last couple of months, I have to say. The idea is that stronger always wins. Capacity rules the day. Now, that said, if y'all were two gals in a garage, founding a startup, I used to be a VC, we would stroke a check if you could build something that was 10x simpler, smarter, or stronger.
Yeah.
But the truth, right? Our clients at Deloitte, right? Household names with reputations to protect. You can't mess up now in pursuit of what's new, right? You can't wreck today's business in pursuit of a sort of a reckless chase of what's next. And so last week we talked about the first of the three adulting trends, right? The idea that business and finance and culture eat technology for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so we talked about the rise of DevX, developer experience, as table stakes for innovation. This week, cyber and trust, right? AKA the baddies who would seek to do us harm. How do we protect this house as we pursue these big blue sky tomorrows? Well, if I were to simply say, this year's trend is cyber and trust, you'd be like, wait a minute. Yeah, so was last year's. And frankly, so was the last 15. Cyber and trust endures as a category worth our attention, but there's always something new in that category, right? And so what's new this year? Well, Tanneasha and Ben are going to give us a master class, I think, in this topic. But as I attempt to maybe soften the target with a bit of a 101, what we've seen in this year's research is the recognition that we literally can't trust our eyes and ears anymore. That social engineering attacks, aka the exploitation of the vulnerabilities of Homo sapiens, right? Trust, relationships, goodwill, right? That's being exploited in bold and terrifying new ways. And if many of y'all remember, in Dalibor, I'm sure you do. I mean, do you remember a generation ago on AOL, right? You'd be on America Online and you'd receive an email from a, quote, Nigerian prince.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and you'd think like, who falls for this stuff? Well, plenty of folks, right? Because those poorly worded phishing emails, as inelegant as they were a means to sort of canoodle their way into your pocket. Like, hey, send me $50. I'm going to send you 5,000. Right?
Yeah.
It probably didn't work most of the time, but it worked enough of the time for the robots to spam it to oblivion. Right? And so we like to think as citizens of modernity, right, that, well, that was the past. Those poor Luddites, those poor souls, they didn't know what they were doing. Well, here's the deal. We're those poor souls too. Right? I saw this story a couple months back. It kind of melted my brain that the erstwhile Nigerian prince is now a convincing 4K video of your coworker, maybe of your boss, who pops in on Zoom or Teams and says, hey, this meeting's coming up in 6 minutes and I forgot the password to the PowerPoint. Can you hook a brother up? Except that's not them.
Yeah.
Right? That's the baddies. and you just gave your password to somebody who wired themselves a couple dozen $1 million to their offshore account. Goodness gracious. Now, in the law profession, there's this term called matters of degree, not kind, AKA, is that phishing attack dramatically different than the AOL thing 20 years ago? No, not really. Right? It's zhuzhed up. It's beyond our capacity for understanding, right? It's not misspellings anymore. It's super believable video. But the point is, when you can't trust your eyes and ears anymore, you need to fight math with math. You need a sort of digital truth serum that can inoculate you against these baddies and their snake oil. And so Ben, right? I think I'm going to explain your business for you. But Ben, CEO and founder of Reality Offender, is going to talk to us about how he and his organization are creating those reality goggles that allow us to see when something is in fact fake in text, in pictures, and video, right? And Tanneasha is going to speak to us a little bit about how Deloitte, right, and our clients are finding these vectors for harm in ne'er-do-wells, in business, in governance, in government, you name it. And so any more syllables out of me is time away from our featured guest. And so maybe Tanneasha, I'd be thrilled if we could perhaps start with some of your reflections. What I get wrong? What precious subset of that might I have gotten right? And how are you seeing baddies using AI for their purposes in 2024 and 2025?
One, I feel like the term baddie makes them sound too cool.
All right,
you know, in
jerk
certain
balls,
parts of
jerk
pop
bags.
culture,
Yeah.
baddie is like a cool thing. Let's call them threat actors, bad actors. Okay.
Okay, bad actors. I dig it.
Bad actors. Bad actors sound like much more scary. A baddie, you might say, no, I kid. But no, you're absolutely right. And I think, I really love the title of today's session in terms of defending our reality, because that's what's at stake, right? I think when thinking about synthetic media and the types of harms and risks that it creates, for me, I'd codify it in 5 buckets, one of which would be societal harm, where more and more we see a divide between communities that's widening because of different societal conversations that are happening today. And as communities are widening, we see the gap between fact and fiction narrowing because of synthetic media. And we really do need to defend our reality that way, because we're already seeing the impact of fake news. We've already seen the impact of revisionist history. And now when you pile on synthetic media, such as deep fakes, that continues to distort facts and hinder societies and us as a community to see reality and see things the same. And like, that's the last thing we need, especially given the tumultuous conversations and disconnect that we're seeing between groups and even countries, right? So for me, like, one of the number one harms is that a societal harm around, like, how do we see and move together in the same space if we don't see reality the same? The second harm that we're seeing is financial harm. And these are instances where deep fakes are being used by baddies or bad actors to get around voice and facial recognition access controls. And bad actors are able to access your private information or access your bank account, causing financial harm to you. We also see where deep fakes are used by, threat actors to scam and to defraud family members, right? Mimicking the voice of your son or your daughter being in a distressing information and saying, oh, I need some money to get bailed out of jail. And I've seen so many instances of this where it actually worked, and tens of thousands of dollars are being sent to some of these bad actors, because family, especially our older population, actually our younger population can't even distinguish between real and fake when it comes to audio, right? So that's the second harm that I'm seeing in this space. The third is really around harm to democratic systems. And this is where a lot of our social media platform, providers are under a lot of scrutiny from a regulatory perspective, because synthetic media, generative AI is being used to proliferate deep fakes and used as a tool for disinformation, right? To distort and impact elections and in election integrity. The fourth harm I would codify as like psychological harm, and this is where, you know, synthetic media is being used to disparage or defame an individual or a group of people by appropriating their likeness, not just to kind of, you know, make a commercial and make money, but appropriating someone's likeness to do something disparaging that you would never do. And think about the psychological harm that caused to the person whose likeness have been appropriated or their loved ones, right? So there's a lot around that, and we've seen where, you know, regulators like the FTC is proposing rules around impersonation and technology being used to impersonate others. And last but not least, the fifth area of harm that I'm seeing is more from a business disruption and displacement perspective. So we know that synthetic media can also, not just from a risk point of view, you know, cause harm, but it can also create some value. But in creating the value by doing things like democratizing the development of, let's say, arduous filmmaking and building and creating movies. But while you're doing that, you're actually displacing jobs, right? And we already see where AI and generative AI are displacing some engineers and displacing some, you know, white collar roles. But imagine entire film crews can become displaced, and that can have a harm from an economic perspective, and just like an overall GDP, right? So, you know, that's how I would codify some of the things that I'm seeing from a harm perspective, ranging from societal harm, financial harm, harm to democratic systems, psychological harm, and disruption and displacement of jobs.
Tanneasha, have you seen at a high level, would you have spoken to those 5 categories? Maybe not the 5th one on the role displacement, but the first 4. Have you been seeing versions of that for years, or is this really hockey sticked in the last 6 to 18 months? I'm just curious about kind of recency and magnitude.
Yeah, we've seen versions of this like throughout history, right? So, and throughout the evolution of wherever there are humans and money to be made, you will see bad actors popping up, right? So even when I was talking about financial harm, right? It's just another way of social engineering. But this technology is allowing bad actors and threat actors to be so sophisticated. Like you talked about the Nigerian Prince email. We knew how to spot those emails because it's like grammatically incorrect. The formatting is off. It's just janky, right? But if you're able to, that's my favorite word, by the way.
You and me both. All right, we're kindred. Okay,
we're kindred. But that's social engineering. Like, but now with generative AI, you can actually create not just perfect emails without grammatical errors, but we've seen executives be defrauded by those same emails. Or imagine you get a call from your CEO or someone on the board. Like, that is just another level of social engineering, making social engineering so much more sophisticated.
Sure.
And even with democratic systems, we've seen nation states with their propaganda machines and you know, pushing out misinformation and disinformation campaign have always been something that happened since we were able to call a space a country. But now it's just much more sophisticated, and we have social media where it can go viral, and it's just this technology just makes it much more sophisticated.
Turbo. Right. Yeah. Turbo, like old problems turbocharged.
Yeah.
So
scaled and sophisticated.
Yeah. So speaking of democratic systems, financial systems, right? Psychology and the whole 9 yards. Ben, thank you for making time for our webinar today. The floor is yours, man. Maybe a little about yourself, your company, and what you're seeing on the front lines of this emergent, you know, intense, you know, situation.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I think that you know, part of the challenge is both to educate, but also to scare people a little bit. Otherwise, people don't realize the degree of the challenge that exists, but I lead a company called Reality Defender, and we provide deepfake and generative AI fraud tools to organizations, including tier one banks, governments, and media companies. And at a high level, we're using AI to detect AI. We have an ensemble of models. Think of it as a constellation of independent models, very similar to antivirus software, that provides a probabilistic view on whether, for example, Tanneasha's face or voice may be AI generated or manipulated. You know, 2/3 of our team are researchers with PhDs and engineers, and even them with their many years of education cannot tell the difference with their own naked eyes. And that's been going on for about 9 months. So we're already 9 months past the ability of humans, of experts, to tell the difference with their naked eyes. And so the challenge here, in the lack of regulation or any kind of rulings at all, is that average consumers just don't stand a chance, whether it's my children or my parents. There's really not a lot we can advise the audience to do to protect themselves, given what you see and hear can be faked with as little as 10 seconds of voice to make a perfect voice match. And so we were in Washington, D.C. yesterday, speaking to the Senate, to one of the subcommittees within the Treasury committee, focused on what regulations could try and support and protect our industries and our companies and our average people. Within a year where not only US has elections, but 2/3 of the world also have elections. And the challenges are not only elections, they're also financial fraud. I think it was forecast that over $1 trillion of fraud will happen this year alone due to generative media. But also closer to home, I believe the stat is 96% of all deepfakes are pornographic. And within that, 99% of those deepfakes are actually attacking women. So, whether it's our children or our mothers or women we work with, all it takes is a bad actor or just somebody with a Google search to create a deepfake, pulling someone's photo off of LinkedIn or off of social media and creating either something very entertaining, perhaps, you, Mike, and your favorite actor, or something incredibly dangerous that's only limited by your own imagination. Wow. We've seen children deepfaking women in their classes. And yes, they're suspended, but no, they're not arrested, because in most states, there are no laws that exist to actually protect against this challenge of synthetic media. The good news is tools like ours are here to help. And certain teams and industries, for example, your organization is thinking long about this, not only protect employees, but also protect your customers and also their customers. But there's a lot more that can be done in a world where social media is moving a mile a minute. And social media doesn't currently have any rules or regulations to do anything here beyond what they offer now, which is community notes, which only flag a synthetic piece of deepfake Taylor Swift video or presidential election misinformation only after it's been flagged 1 million times. And as they say, that once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't put it back in.
Wow. Scared. Check. I'm feeling scared. And those, I mean, for straight talk, right? Like, I'm a raging techno optimist. And so for me to be squirming a little bit is probably A, unusual, and B, good for me. Dalibor, what questions, where would you like to probe or encourage Ben to take us? Because I have a feeling there's a double click that gets even more vivid here, but I defer to your facilitatory acumen.
Well, I think that is really important for all the audience members to recall hearing here a moment ago that 9 months ago, so late last year, we've crossed the threshold technologically that we no longer can trust that what we are seeing is true in real. That I think is news. Well, intuitively, I kind of knew it, but this is a confirmation that we are there. Ben, I would love if you can do actually a little bit of a double click. I would be curious to hear what you might be able to share with us about the conversation with the Senate yesterday, because I know that I understand that the regulations are being contemplated. I know that in Europe regulations has come. I would love to get some of your thoughts on that front, but also I think interesting for the audience if you can actually share some examples with us and with the audience where we could see what you mean, and we can also see and see how your organization is actually attempting to help.
Sure.
Right?
No, thank you for that. So the conversation yesterday within the Senate, chaired by Senator Blumenthal and also Ranking Member Hawley, was initially focused around election misinformation. And what we discussed initially was around, what we saw with the deepfake President Biden robocall around the primaries. And the picture I worked to paint was that this was kind of a static one-to-many attack with off-the-shelf tooling. It wasn't customized; it was pre-recorded, and I really wanted to, really paint the picture and scare our elected officials on what could happen and we expect to happen. Where instead of it being a static pre-recorded piece of audio from a president, it'll be a live, real-time deepfake, perhaps from your husband, from your wife, from your boss. They may say, Mike, Tanneasha, I know today's election day, but we need you in the office at 4 a.m. We have an urgent call with our clients in Asia. You might be an election worker. They might say, Ben, we need you across town. We know you're unpaid, we know you're a volunteer, but we need you at a different election precinct. And so, these are people that might not be, the CEOs of organizations, might be junior folks. And the type of tools we're seeing can only deepfake, for example, Tanneasha's voice. But it can also deepfake what instructions Tanneasha might be giving to her team at a critical juncture. And the challenge is that when you're a junior person organization, you don't have the same level of cybersecurity and operational risk expertise or even support. And with tools, whether it's taking a face, taking a voice, taking text, you can do all this completely programmatically, customize it for every person, and do it in a way that seems completely normal within the realm of how they engage and how they receive instructions. So that's the scary part. Now, the less scary part is that tools exist right now to actually protect against this. Tools like Reality Defender, but we're just one piece of a kind of a larger constellation of different tools. No single solution can solve generative media the same way no single solution can solve for antivirus or CSAM protection, protection against underage imagery or violence or nudity. But let me take a step back and maybe take you on a little bit of a journey of at least how we think about the problem and some of the solutions. Let me just share my screen, and also going to share sound, and hopefully this will work. It's always exciting. I might have my my Steve Jobs moment, as they say. So if I could get a quick thumbs up, can you guys see my screen? Okay, perfect. So, kind of how did we get here today? And, just sharing a few quick graphs. Everything that we're talking about, whether it's generative AI and deepfake creation or detection, they require very expensive computation. We can't run this software on a local computer. We can't run it on our MacBook. Why are these tools getting more prevalent? Well, the training costs for hardware and software costs are going down very quickly. They're approaching zero. And the cost per billion inferences, which are used to generate deepfake faces and voices, previously were in the millions of dollars. Now they're in the hundreds of dollars. And that's changing very quickly. It's forecast to be under $700 by 2030. And as we think about the democratization of AI, there's tens of thousands of tools that are freely available. Some cost a few dollars, but the majority are free, that are just a Google search away. You could go onto your iPhone, your Android device right now and go to the App Store and look for fake face generator, fake voice generator, or what's called Nudify apps. And there's thousands. They're available to everybody. And what's incredibly scary is you don't have to be a computer science or AI expert. If I asked you to create ransomware or a computer virus, you have to be a computer scientist if you know how to write code. But with these tools, you just have to have somebody's YouTube video or their LinkedIn profile photo of you, Mike, or you, Tanneasha, and you can create something incredibly dangerous. And the speed of adoption we used to count in terms of years. Now it's in terms of months or even weeks. Now we saw ChatGPT. go viral in less than 2 months. So, consumers and or bad actors getting access to these tools very quickly. And again, with the lack of regulation, you can create a deep fake of anybody saying anything. Let's talk a little about numbers. So we've seen almost 2,000% increase in deepfake attacks in the US alone. And we've seen, over 300% increase in the UK. And this is from last year. It's actually even higher right now. Now, we saw leadership at LexisNexis forecast $1 trillion of fraud in the US alone tied to deepfakes. And we're already seeing this with real-time voice fraud with banks, which are kind of the number one use case for Reality Defender, which are scanning call center phone calls. Perhaps somebody already knows Mike's birthday, his social security number, his address. Again, all available on the dark web, or could have been hacked. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, I'm an
that's true
open book.
for all
It's
of us.
probably available on the light web with how much I overshare, but yeah.
No comments there. We're not trying to deepfake Mike. And the 38% of large companies in the US have faced over 50 deepfake attacks in the last year. So this could be brand safety, could be executive reputation, could be someone impersonating the CEO saying, "Hi, Tanneasha, I authorized the $10 million wire transfer to your bank." And just kind of going into the news.
AI-generated audio is now easier to make and harder to detect.
Were you guys able to hear that audio?
We have, yes.
Okay, great. So, that audio was made of President Biden using off-the-shelf tools. I'm not going to name the tools because we don't want to encourage folks that are available, again, online with a few mouse clicks, just Googling a synthetic voice generator. Now, you can do this with less than 10 seconds of audio. Now, it won't know how you won't know your slang. It won't know information that you only know, but it'll sound and act just like you. And that's incredibly scary. And there's no kind of onboarding KYC or any kind of checks and balances to ensure that you're not a bad actor when you're using this. When you buy a weapon in the US, you have to do a background check. But here with these digital weapons, there are no background checks. Anybody with a credit card can do this. Now, we're seeing that countries, companies, and consumers are at risk. We saw in Hong Kong a $25 million deepfake attack that led to a wire fraud. We're seeing the attack with MGM Resort, which was not actually a deepfake, but it was impersonating somebody's voice.
Yep.
We're seeing deepfake audio being used to pretend to be a loved one. They're in trouble. They got into a car accident. They need you to wire money. Now, I'm a supposed expert in the space, but if I hear my 7-year-old saying that he's in trouble and he's going to wire money, am I going to take that risk, or am I going to wire the $1,000 immediately? I'm probably going to wire the $1,000. I'm just not worth the risk. Now, the good news here is we're working with telecoms to provide kind of a better form of spam block, which will look like an alert on your phone saying, this sounds like Mike, but this is indicatively AI voice. But our challenge here is that the compute needed for this requires cloud compute, and we're still probably a few years away from running this on device. But working with the largest chip manufacturers in the US, we're really excited to kind of have something we hope early next year that allow us to run this on device. No promises, but we hope so.
Hey,
And then,
Ben,
go ahead.
But
Go ahead.
I just wanted to sort of ask a question here, just based on what you mentioned. How I interpret what you said is right now your technology actually needs significant compute, so it cannot really be still running on someone's laptop or a phone, and hence, of course, your primary clients are institutions, organizations, banks, and so forth. Did I hear you?
That's correct. That's correct.
So, and what I heard you say, just correct me if I understand this right, that next year you assume or plan to have your technology be so optimized that perhaps even it will be available for individual laptops or phones to run, which would be the difference between being able to protect myself as an individual versus being able to afford protection as an enterprise, right?
That's correct. I mean, there's one caveat that the good news is we can run this anywhere right now. It just needs an internet connection. It needs to, use cloud compute. But it's expensive. So the only folks that can afford this, the actual compute needed, are large banks, large media companies, large government groups. We are working with the leading silicon chip manufacturers in the US to see how we can deploy either on the edge or on device themselves. It's really a challenge around evolutions in both compute on device, but also in terms of battery life as well. You don't want to use your mobile phone and have it only last 20 minutes because of the amount of compute it's using. So our expectation is within the next 18 months, we'll be able to run this on your phone. But in the meantime, we're excited to share that with the leading banks who are already protecting your voice and ensuring that it can't be used for different types of account escalation attacks, lost my password, or wire transfer authorizations, or impersonations.
So,
one, I'm sorry, Mike.
no, I was going to ask you, Tanneasha, like how you're seeing this show up on the client side, but you go.
Yeah, no worries. I wanted to also paste a spotlight one of the questions that we got from an anonymous person, but I think, Ben, you covered most of it, where they were asking how does Digital Defender and Deloitte the work that we do impact the development of deep fakes or AI generated news, et cetera. Impact mean detect, slow down, introduce tools. And I think, Ben, you went over a number of tools, and now you're talking about this new technology that you're hoping could be on device side to protect users from fraud and scams, from audio mimicking. I think it's also important to spotlight work that is being done and what a lot of the platform providers, social media platform providers, but also the actual technology developers, the owners of some of these large language models, they are advocating for digital signatures and labeling of anything that's AI generated. And if you have that as an industry standard, and each of these companies that are actually building the underbelly of the technology and it's watermarked somehow, that allows for images that are, let's say, on your favorite social media platform, for them to have the counter, receptor technology to detect whether or not that's a deep fake. But you need that digital signature, and the digital signature and watermark has to be strong enough to not be circumvented or removed by one of these baddies or bad actors. So there is a lot of work being done there by the Coalition of Content Provenance and Authenticity. They are working on these types of standards, and all of the technology companies are participating in this, and they have a call for standards. So that's one of the other preventative measures that are being explored, is this digital signature on image and video generated content, and what Ben is also speaking of in terms of wanting to have a piece of technology on your phone that can help detect audio or voice mimicked deep fakes. So I just wanted to close out that question that came in.
For sure. Tanneasha, I'm grateful for your double click there, and standards bodies, regulation, and macro, it's going to be needed here, clearly. I'm wondering something else I'm curious about from your expertise in market here. Like, there's a big chasm between protecting maybe an individual's laptop, like Dalibor's example, and a US Global 5 banking call center. What are you seeing in terms of like middle of the bell curve client savviness, awareness, preparedness for this? Like, to the degree that you can share, like what's the state of the defense posture right now?
No one's prepared. No, I can't, but I don't really kid. I'm kind of serious.
No, that's
so I would say, like, this is, again, new evolving space, right? So that's great that we have companies like Ben's organization that's thinking about the tools that need to be there. And there are other companies that are building like software technology that, you have bodies that are thinking about standards and pieces of code that could be embedded as the technology is being adopted to safeguard against some of these risks. But if you think about the middle of the curve company, like they're not ready. They know that it's there. So a lot of education is being explored in terms of what is AI and then what is generative AI, right? And then what does that mean for our business from like a value perspective? And now they're thinking, wait, I need to defend our business and defend our infrastructure and protect our consumers and protect our products. So those conversations are like live and in action now. I'd say the most ready companies or sector in this space would most likely be financial services, because they've had to deal with fraud and like machine learning models in the past. This is just like another level of sophistication. So they are gearing up and working with companies and standing up controls within their security organizations. And then the technology or digital platform companies, again, because they've had to keep their platform clean, not to just comply with regulations, but also to get advertising dollars, because no one wants to have their beautiful brand next to explicit pornographic content, right? Yeah. So they have the technology to take things down quickly and to report things. But now, because generative AI can scale the abuse, so before, if you're taking down 1 billion content, that to the 100 power is what generative AI will be able to do. And they're used to dealing with bots and all of those things, right? They're not doing it well half the time. But now they are having to strengthen some of their controls and safeguards. So I'd say the tech sector and financial services, specifically banking sector, have the muscle. Now the muscle just has to get bigger and more sophisticated.
Thank you. Wow.
Ben, I cut you off. I realized in the middle of your presentation, I didn't let you finish. Like, please carry on. I was really interested to validate that what you were saying. I heard that your technologies might actually soon become available to individuals as well.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, that's our goal. Currently, we have our hands full supporting, as Tanneasha mentioned, large regulated organizations across banking and media and government. But I also want to double click on something that Tanneasha mentioned, which is really important, is that there's one single solution here. We really commend our presidential administration on kind of focusing on deepfakes within the recent executive order. And a lot of the focus was on watermarking and provenance. And what we'll share is in Reality Defender, we focus on inference, not provenance. So provenance requires a watermark or a cryptographic hash. It's deterministic. It's either there or it's not. For Reality Defender, we presuppose that the watermark might be missing, or the bad actor might just ignore it completely and say, you know what, we're going to create a deepfake of a president or a CEO or of a woman. We're going to ignore watermarking and we're going to share it outside of social media. We'll share it on chat, maybe on WhatsApp or Telegram. And so what Reality Defender, what we're doing is what's called inference, which is not a yes, no, it's more of a probabilistic approach. It's kind of showing confidence intervals. And so we might only say we are 89% confident that Mike's voice might be deepfake. And that's because the quality, the fidelity, there might be background noise. And so, very similar to antivirus software, uses a range of different tools and techniques. So must we focus, these techniques around detecting generative media and dangerous deepfakes. And so, while Reality Defender, we're focusing kind of on this one pane of what's called inference. We're really multiple models to kind of work together. And it does take it takes a village, and we're in the very early days. And if we want to solve this to protect average consumers and our children and their children, we certainly need a lot more support, not only within our elected officials and regulations, but also within industry kind of coming together. And that's why we're very excited on our work with Deloitte. I'm not sure how much I can share, but Deloitte's spending a lot of time thinking about this, not only how to offer this as a support, but also how to kind of more provide automated tooling, given that it's not just picking this file or this voice stream. We need to check everything. Everything all the time. The analogy I'll give is that for those old enough will remember a time when we picked which files you scanned for computer viruses. I want to pick this file, this PowerPoint. But now it's everywhere. It's happening in real time in the background because regulations require it. You only find out it's happening when you get an email from Outlook or from Gmail saying we blocked ransomware. We blocked a Trojan horse. My mother sends me these presentations of cat videos. And I always say, Mom, you can't forward these to everybody. They might have a virus in them. And, more often than not, her cat video presentations have a virus in them, and Gmail and Outlook will block it. So we're in the very, very early chapters right now with synthetic media. We will get there, but we certainly need a lot more collaboration.
Well, Tanneasha, something that I'm curious about, like in my opening frame, when I talked about sort of this idea of so much is precedented, and that, cyber and risk endure. Here's the latest chapter in the never-ending book. The question that I might have for you is, do you find that this particular battlefront sits with the traditional suspects, aka CISOs, traditional cyber professionals who were doing, firewall tech and now find themselves doing inference or, Providence tech, or are there some new people in the new party, like just in terms of kind of actors in the play, if you will?
And that's why we don't say cybersecurity. Like even the
Right.
name of our business is cyber. It's full stop, right? Because under cyber, it is security, it is privacy, it is safety, it is trust, right? It's tech resilience, right? So with that, we're seeing that the past behaviors and the past harms and threat actors were really sitting kind of in the cybersecurity side versus the privacy side or the data protection side or the resilience or safety. Now with this technology and just the way that technology overall, all advanced technology have been scaling and proliferating, it's cutting across all these disciplines. So it definitely sits within the cyber domain. What we're seeing more so is that the skill sets are evolving, right? So in a traditional organization that has like a trust and safety team, they can sit within the chief information security officer organization or next to it. But then the infrastructure and the information sharing is the same, because just as though in traditional security, we do threat intelligence, right? In trust and safety, we have to do threat intelligence because you may have deep fakes being used by a terrorist organization to do some sort of propagating. And you need to be able to have a threat intelligence muscle to do that. Risk assessments that cuts across domains. So there's a lot of sharing of information and sharing of capabilities that are traditional within the cyber domain. It's just that now it has like a different facade, a different way of being, or a different way of surfacing on different types of, no pun intended, surfaces, products and features, and the way that our customers or users or citizens are seeing it in media. So traditionally the ownership or the responsibility is being fulfilled or falling within the remit of your security professionals, but security, privacy, safety is everyone's responsibility, right, within the company. So legal it has a role to play. Compliance has a role to play. Product, because they're deploying the products,
right?
They have a role to play, right? So that's how we're seeing it.
It makes a bucket of sense, and I'm grateful. I learned a metric ton from your insights right there, but even just that opening of like it's cyber, not cybersecurity for a reason, speaking to kind of the holistic, nature of it all. I remember being in a board meeting with a large financial company who I can't name, but this recognition that, like, when we talked about data science or analytics, it felt techie, and it's for the tech team and the CIO.
Right.
But suddenly you're talking about artificial machine intelligence that can create a dossier, a document, or whatever. You're like, whoa, it's inherently holistic and cross-department. And so I'd never thought of that on the cyber side until the two of you have opened my eyes, that it's no longer just it can't just be the cyber people.
And we're here to open your eyes and everyone else's eyes that are watching. That's why we're here.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
So the natural next question is like, what do we do? So I understand now that a couple of important points. So we are now in a moment in time where voice, video, text can be created that human beings cannot distinguish between real or fake. And that happened about 9 months ago, as Ben said. We are also hearing that technologies are being developed that should be like what we now experience with antivirus. So that, fast forward a few years into the future, we should be able to protect ourselves by having undercurrent systems tracking and assessing every email, every text message, every video, and hopefully through some combination of regulatory requirements and technology, these systems will be able to identify and point to us risks or eliminate those that are there. But we are now in the gap between these two bookmarks. This is the moment of risk and threat. So I don't know, Ben and Tanneasha, well, what should organization, like, what can we do now to protect ourselves? What should organizations be thinking and doing while we wait for this moment where this technology will be more helpful?
Yeah, I would say, the good news is that because it's so computationally expensive, we are not going to see a lot of great deepfake real-time or non-real-time videos yet, but that will happen next year. I'd say right now the biggest threat vector we're seeing on a large scale is deepfake audio. So much of our life, so much of our decisions, so much of our finances are decided based on phone calls or audio within Zoom. So this year, that is where we see a lot of our clients focusing. We're preparing though for next year, similar explosion in real-time video as well.
I was gonna joke and say just stay off the internet, but we can't. But I kid.
I told my kids that, Tanneasha. My 7-year-old, he does not get screen time.
No, that's actually a good thing for children. I think, the old security adage was trust but verify. I think in the new day of just general cyber is don't trust and still verify when it comes to some of the deep fakes and being able to protect yourself against this harm. In my utopian view of the world is like, I'm hoping at some point in time, hopefully when the computational power is greener and the technology is to defend against this risk is also scaling, is for us to have some sort of imagine every citizen have their own generative AI that protects them while they traverse the internet, right? So if I'm interacting with a website, if I'm interacting with a piece of media, that my smart, intelligent Tanneasha defender can tell me, oh, that's fake. Oh, that is not real. Oh, it's actually generated, but it's IP protected and it's actually owned by a legitimate person or a legitimate business. And because I really do feel like as humans, some of this stuff is just going to be very hard to detect. And the companies will have the money and scalability to protect the assets they have. But many of us interact with different companies that have different levels of sophistication in terms of cyber security or safety or privacy, et cetera. So my hope is that there's some sort of public-private partnership where every citizen has their own digital defender or protector for how they interact with media, companies, technology assets, digital platforms online to prevent against some of this.
And I love what you just painted. And I know that historically we've been talking about AI becoming your personal assistant. This is not that. This is having AI as your personal polymath genius.
Yes. It's like a bodyguard for the digital environment, right?
Yeah.
I'm the bodyguard. I'm over here trademarking names for this startup. We got Guardian Angel. We got Digital Defense. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So, but this is actually a very interesting contemplation because we are going beyond having a co-pilot on your right shoulder, an assistant, to having actually a genius that is personally yours that helps you in this sense. But you can imagine it can be helping you in everything else that you do.
Yes.
And you can have a genius in math, genius in finance, genius in life's purpose at your fingertips. I can see that emerging.
Right.
And what a what a great thing for that could be, right?
Yeah, someone should go build it.
Yeah.
Put my
Right.
name on it. No, I'm just kidding.
Ben,
We're working on that.
Yeah. Ben, take it where you may, but Tanneasha is kind of provoking thoughts on potential futures here. Where do you see these hockey sticks going? These ambiguities collapsing? Take it where you want. Bliss or doom or some third thing that's more nuanced.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positives and optimism on where the world's going. I just think that right now, technology is moving much faster than regulation and education. There's a little bit of catch-up needed, but I'm extremely positive about the future. We have a lot of different tools and features beyond just whether something is deemed potentially real, potentially fake, thinking about content and context and truthfulness and what is the standard Tanneasha kind of view on things. Example I'll give is, Tanneasha, I don't know your sports fandom, but let's say, Tanneasha typically says, I love the Nets. And suddenly there's a post, looks real, but says, I love the Knicks. Again, no speculation on if you're a Nets or Knicks fan. But even if it is real, if it's not, considered trending in a personal way, that's among a set of anomalies that'll be used to determine whether or not this post or this image or video or email might be considered fraudulent or not. So we have a lot of different types of machine learning that we're thinking about here, but right now we're kind of complete heads down focusing on what's happening right now, which is how do we provide a minimum level of protection for governments and companies and their consumer users to believe what they see and hear.
Thank you very much for that, Ben. So what I extract from it is that your view of the future is an optimistic one, right? Yes, I'd love to hear
100%.
100%. So Tanneasha, I'd love to get, we are coming to the end of our time. I would love to get your thoughts on how you think this will sort of evolve and whether you are sort of optimistic or more cautious about what's coming.
I'm cautiously optimistic. Let's say that. I think, and of course, this is the area that I've been in for 17 years. So for me, this is exciting and complicated, right? And I love how you teed up and framed we're just in this period before technology catches up to being more protected by default, right? Because to your point, back in the 90s, when you had to have the ad spam and pop-up blocker, and it was just a mess. But our operating system providers and technology providers were able to become more sophisticated and embed security by default. That's why you don't see all the pop-up stuff like we saw in the 90s, because it was by default. And I think that's what we want to get to when we have platforms and websites that are surfacing media content that needs to be prevented by default. And back to what Ben was saying, imagine you have a partnership with these device manufacturers where that type of media is prevented by default. So I think we'll get there based off past precedent. This always happens when there's a new piece of technology, there's risk associated with it, there's a lot of traction, and then protective mechanisms have to be developed and innovated to protect against it or to address it. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the future, and it keeps me gainfully employed. It allows me to have an impact, right? Because it's measurable impact.
Of course.
And you get to protect enterprises, you get to protect the safety and the sanctity of industries, of people's psychological stability, as well as financial stability. So it's a very interesting, fascinating space with a lot of good life work reward associated with it if you get it right.
Yes.
But I'm excited because I think the next big thing we are going to have to fight is quantum computing, because once the computing power gets there, right, we get to quantum computing, all this stuff is going to be faster, like what Ben was saying. We have to catch up with technology, but then quantum computing could be used to break cryptographic technology, and how do we prevent against that? That's what we're going to be talking about. Then the metaverse is going to come back.
Cat and mouse.
Cat and mouse. And then the metaverse will be back as well, right? Because then you can use generative AI to create metaverse environments faster. And then we're going to need digital defenders. We're going to need more security control. So all of that's how I see the future, like coalescing with these new advanced technologies working together and us innovating to protect people and systems.
This has been a fantastic conversation.
Great.
Thank you so very much, Tanneasha and Ben. Mike, I'll let you close us off.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Oh gosh. Well, yeah, folks, thanks Dalibor for hosting, for sponsoring, Ben for your pioneering entrepreneurship, Tanneasha for your inimitable executive leadership, and team, while you were inspiring me, I created a logo for Guardian Angel.
There we go.
Using generative AI, and that I did it in 10 seconds is both a reason to believe and to despair. But thank you so much, and join us in a couple of weeks on Core Modernization. We're going to talk about how thinking of Core Mod less like a trip to the dentist and more like daily fitness tracking on your watch will not only save you money, but it'll save your sanity. Appreciate y'all.
Wonderful. Have yourself a
Bye.
lovely Wednesday, everyone. Bye-bye.